whole universe. Once upon a time, ours was called wasn't called M31, but it's what science calls M31. We are actually right now in a distortion field called the Milky Way that is down in this area. So we'll talk about those things more tomorrow too. What I want you to get most is the understanding of, because we're going to do an Adashi temple journey, the access key journey, where you get the keys, the certain frequency keys that will allow you to go to the Adashi temples whenever you want in your own projections, and to receive the assistance of what are called the Aquafarian. The Aquafarian races of Eartha are very, very sweet people. They are a hybrid race. They are part of the Christ races from the Aquarian matrix that fully went through Starfire, so they're fully Christed beings, that came in on host to assist this falling system. And in seeding 2 of the angelic humans, they began a hybrid race that were called the Aquafarian. So Aquafarian means human, angelic human, hybridized with the original Christic race. And it's kind of funny because the original template for the angelic human, way before we had the Oraphim and then the Turanicium from Tara and then the angelic humans here, the original prototype for the hominid human form that has this shape and 2 eyes and nose and doesn't look like E.T., this shape came from the Aquarian matrix in that particular group. So they are actually our face sakes, in the sense that we look more like them than anything else in the universe, and they look more like us. And they are a living race that are on Eartha. They are one of the main councils right now, because they are so close, that are bringing the information in from Eartha through the gates to us to get us out of here, eventually through ascension, through natural ascension. And the first process is being able to use the ascension chambers. So I want to show you something about the Rasha body structure, how it creates the light body structure, and what that means in terms of the Earth that we're on right now. And that is the next pack. You got those out already? You're quick. Okay, if we remember, we had the 15 Jaleesic layers. They're just showing one layer. Let's say it's the D2 layer, the layer we perceive as solid. Remember, there are 4 embedded layers, a D1 layer, D2 layer, D3 layer, and D4 layer. It's not D4, though. It's actually density layer, what is called a density layer, because there would also be a D4, a D5, a D6, and a density layer in density 2, etc. So what we're dealing with simply is looking at the core, frozen ethers, and that's where the meta-Els form, and then the liquid outer core, then the solid levels of the mantle, then the atmosphere, and where should be a coronosphere of burning vapors. And yes, you can have biomes on the surface or even below the surface in situations like that. Biomes that are natural breatharians would not be scorched to death by being underneath the coronosphere. It also means that when you see stars out there, it doesn't mean that life can't live there. It just means our scientists think that life can't live there because they don't understand the nature of our angular rotation of particle spin yet in relation to dimensions and planes. So this is the basic structure. It is set by what we saw as the Rasha body structure, the dark matter templates. Next one, please. Just like the light body, the Rasha body structure, when we look at this in terms of the planets, the layers of a planet, the layers of the planet have Alon, Shalon, and Kalon rings, and also Oron rings that would be way up now in the atmosphere levels. They also have fire chambers. The fire chambers connect into the fire chambers of the Rasha body, which connect into the Illyrian chambers, which connect into the 8-cell cluster of the Hall of Records, which connects into the Akashic and the Akashic record at the center of the spirit body. So all of these structures, we actually are, any planet, any star, has these chambers that connect to the chambers, connect to the chambers, connect to the chambers. A living star, or a living celestial body, a living planet, if you will, would be able to do prana exchange with its Rasha body in order to allow the natural currents of the adjugate twins to move back and forth between. It would allow a natural evolution cycle as the matter formed and then progressively evolved and progressively de-densified and went into progressively higher Christic states into a Dashi turnaround. We are not on a planet that is capable of doing that anymore. But the host shield, called the Aquafarian shield, which is the group of people who are here who are direct descendants of the Aquafarian races, a bunch of whom we're just learning live in the Amsterdam area. That's why we were asked to come here. Anyway, the Aquiferians hold a shield on planet that allows for these frequencies to be activated partially in the planetary grids, only temporarily, only while we're here, but long enough to facilitate the host to allow the ascension passages to stay open for 223 years. And I look at it this way, they expect me to stay that long, me and Aswell. They certainly better do something with Regenesis really fast, right? Because I feel like I'm 900 years old sometimes. Anyway, this is showing you that, yes, there's alons, kaolins, shaons, and these are crystal layers that are in the planet, right? And in some of them in the atmosphere. There's a natural process by which the atmosphere, through these chambers, is supposed to interact with the emissions that are given off by the sun and create something called the solar symbiosis cycle, which is a natural breathing cycle by which the core, hydrogen and such at the core of a star, can be recharged. They can take in the frequencies or the protons and electrons that are coming from the solar wind and the arcs of energy that are supposed to come off the sun. They would take them in through the chambers. Certain changes would take place in the planetary body, and that would open the center core prana seed. It would allow the prana seed to phase. It would allow the frequency to go back out, where the frequency from here would connect with its adjugate twin, and then there would be a backflow return. So it would be an eternal life cycle, an eternal life planet through something called the solar symbiosis cycle. That's something that this planet can't do anymore either. But we are able to do that with the host shield. Next one, please. Get there. Now, let's look at in terms of geography, sort of. This is one layer. Let's say it is the D2 15 Jaleesic layer set. We've got our Jaleesic layer 1, 2, 3, which would be the solid core. We have 4, 5, 6, which would be the liquid core aquifers. We have 7, 8, 9, which would be the mantle. We have the 9.5 crust. This is where Earth's crust is. Okay? This would be the thermosphere. As far as the thermosphere is where there's all like where our inner atmosphere, where our weather happens and all that. Out here would be where the Van Allen belts are. So if you know how far up the Van Allen belts are, you can start to judge, which science does, you can start to judge from surface Earth how far up is what. Because what this is going to show you in terms of once you can identify, okay, something that's here and physical and you know where it is up there, it gives you a mileage type thing of how many miles or kilometers up. But this you're going to see also shows us where Eartha is in relation to us, where the planes of Eartha are, where the Adashi temples are. There's also something that in certain layers, in this, the 7, 8, 9 layer of the mantles, on any level of this, be it the D1 etheric, the D2 telluric, the D3 atmic, it doesn't matter what density level it's on either. There are certain things characteristic to each one of these layers. One of the things characteristic to the Ma, it's called the Ma, that's its encryption sound, Ma 8th layer, is that there are crystal temples in those areas. Now, these would be where Earth's natural crystal temples are. The crystal temples are the crystals that we showed you pictures of in yesterday's orientation. They're running more up through here. They were seated on top of the natural crystals of Earth, and they were seated in from a planet called Nibiru that had been pulled into what was called monadic reversal, which is reversal. It's natural encryption codes that form the fire letters, that form the crystal bed, the literal crystal core of which it's made. So they weren't a good thing. They're things that are now coming under the control of the Christ races, so they can recode them enough to where they will assist in the healing process instead of cause more harm. But this is giving you an idea of the structures. Surface Earth, layers of mantle, liquids under that, liquid outer core, and has various substances too. Some of them are actually water-like. Others are plasmoids, whatever that is. They use the word plasmoid. Moid, M-O-I-D. I don't know what a plasmoid is yet. That's new. But what is a plasmoid? Anyway, then we have the solid core. And at the center of that solid core, there is what are called the etaurs, or the ethers. And that is where the prana seed would be. And that is where the opening, the natural cycle of breathing of the planet or star would occur through the opening of the prana seed to the Rasha template, dark matter template, that goes through the spirit body, that goes directly into source, goes backflow to source, and source sends out backflow return. Next one, please. Yeah, will cover these more as well tomorrow, once like more specific stuff on the nets and things. But I want to get you to a certain point where you see some other things here today. But here is looking at, if you take, this is actually two embedded ones shown together, and we're seeing the rings of the D3 level one, which would be the bigger one outside of the D2 level one. If we put the D2 cathode in, it would be here, right? So the surface level, that 9.5, always falls at 9.5, and the crust always falls at a 9.5 layer, and that would be 9.5 layer on the D2 grid. This is the 9.5 layer on the D3 grid, okay? So this is surface Earth D2 that we're walking on. Now, up here, this is D3. Remember, D3 is atomic energy, and D2 is telluric, the stuff we see as solid, and then D1 is etheric that's in there someplace, right? That would be a smaller grid down in here. It means there is a surface to each one of them, a crust, a surface Earth to each one, and this would be the one we are walking around and seeing as solid. This one would be considered the mental plane. This is where we get things like certain versions of cloud cities, because you can catch glimpses of them sometimes. They are physical when you get yourself into that particular state of matter. And it has to do with what your base pulse rhythm is, or how fast your prana seed is cycling. The whole ascension process, you could perceive most of these places as physical. Even the etheric. The etheric, when we perceive it from here, appears quite ghost-like. All right, that's the one. This one even appears ghost-like, but it's actually a more dense form of matter, believe it or not. It's more dense, but it's at a bit different angular rotation and particle spin than we are here in this light field, so we don't see it technically. But when you're imagining things, where is your mind? Where are our minds? They're in the D3 mental body area. This would be the D3 mental body area of Earth. So that is like a collective thought form field, and it's a few other things too. We'll see in tomorrow's work how there has been a split to the natural structure, what should be the natural structure and layering of the planes here, that was caused by the use of the beast machine. But for now, just understanding that from our core coming up to our surface, going up into our atmosphere, and up and up and up into our atmosphere, there are all sorts of plane interfaces that are literally there. So ascension is much closer than it seemed like for a long time. You don't have to go take a right up at Lyra to get to the Eka. It's like some of them are right here. And Eartha is literally, we are a hosting planet, literally inside of a host star called Eartha. And Eartha, we just found out, happens to be in M31. And the planes directly interface through an intermediary matrix called the Aquiel matrix that runs through the Adore side. So we are literally at a different angular rotation of particle spin inside a host star. We are the only one, and this is why Earth has been a target. This was the one full host alignment in the entire Milky Way galaxy that allowed it to connect to its original gate system. That's why this place has been under fire for so long by fallen angelics. It is also why we are very, very lucky, because it makes it very, if anywhere you can be ascended from, it would be here. So at this point, even in the damage, if you needed to be evac'd in ascension, this is where it would be easiest to do it from. And that's what we're in the process, what they're in the process of doing. It's really a 223-year evac run. And since this has been going on for this whole big rescue mission has been going on for 450 billion years, that's a really quick evac when you think about it. Right? It's all relative to where you are. So this is our atmosphere out here. I just want you to see a little bit more about this so you see where the Adashi temples are. And we'll cover more of this in more depth tomorrow. Next one, please. I will stop in 10 minutes. All right. Again, this is D2, surface Earth. This is D3, mental body, surface Earth. All right. Here is the inner Van Allen belt. And I haven't had the time yet to put how many kilometers up that is. But that's known by science, right? It's on the internet you can find it. Somebody actually found it for us. I just haven't had time to plug it in. Where? On these? I don't. No, these were guessings. I won't go with those. I won't until I double check these, because they were conflicting in two different sources. So I want to make sure it's okay. Because some of these I actually found myself. but they were conflicting with each other in some of them, so I just kind of ignore those for now. There's something like that, but there are more. I will look at the ones that Jim got. Yeah. Out here, this would be what's called the Van Allen gap, right? Which is a space in the atmosphere between the Van Allen inner and the Van Allen outer bands. This would be the Van Allen outer band, and this would be going up past it. All right? Now, when this goes up to a certain level, when we get to the level of what we considered our magnetosphere, which according to, and I'm not sure if this is right, it was about 60,000 kilometers up, was some book registered that as the magnetosphere. And I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if it's an old book. But somewhere up there, a measurement is known for what is called the magnetosphere that is around the outside, like the weight outside of the atmosphere, connecting Earth into space kind of thing. It is up here that the interfaces of these of Earth's three bodies, D1, D2, and D3 bodies, would interface with the D1, D2, and D3 bodies of Eartha. So you would not only just have to deal with Earth's, to see where the planes intersect, you would have D1, D2, and D3 of Earth, then what is called Earth's density grid, like we learned in the Cathara bit about your density Cathara grid level. Then there is the D1, D2, and D3 level of a larger form that is Eartha around it. So you're dealing with like 5 embedded 15 Jaleesic layers at this point. To try to put them all on one grid, it just loses all the details to the point where you can't see anything. So what we did was pull the most important ones out. With this, we create what are called the spherical maps. And it is from the spherical maps, a cross-section of the spherical maps, that the vertical maps are created. Next one, please. Didn't you mention it? Speaking of which, in fact, can we, why don't we plug that into the spherical map before it, or, no, it goes with the spherical one. Yeah. This one, the one that we just used. Yeah. Remember, it aligns that into the corner of the center. It's something like that. Anyway, to get the concept, it wasn't even this one I used it on, but it's the same concept. Try it on that dot. Try it on that dot and see if that's what that dot is for. I think it might be. I wasn't sure either. Right. Now here is how the spherical map of the spheres within the spheres and the planes that they represent, how that turns into a vertical map, where if you take the center line of where those spheres just cross through from the core all the way up and out as far as the Jaleesic radiation layers extend, and you just put a dot on that vertical going upward, it will show you each place one of those spheres crosses the central vertical. Now, if you take that information, and you can move the sphere now, please. Bye-bye. No. Thank you. If you take that information of what would be of little dots, little marks, right, where your spheres cross through, right, and then drew straight lines, and like, say, I made a column, right, that would give you a vertical. Now, since you have 5 layers of Ds, D1, D2, D3, and density Earth, and D1, D2, and D1, D2, and D3 of Eartha, if you have all of those, the ones we need to show most, we want to see where Earth's surface is in relation to where we are in our surface is, where physical Eartha is, where we would have to be to experience physical Eartha. So you would take it 5 up. You would go Earth D1, D2, D3, and then Earth's density grid. And Earth's density grid is the same place as the D1 level of Eartha. Then you'd have D2 level Eartha, and that would give you 5 embedded Cathara grids, each with 15 Jaleesic layers. And if you put those together, it would give you a vertical map that shows you where Earth is, where you are, as far as the surface goes, in relation to where Eartha is. It would also show you that in the Ma-8 layer, on any of those geodesic layers, there is a set of crystal temples. We have them on the smaller scale of Earth, and there are also those in the larger structure of the Eartha body. They are called the Adashi temples, the ones in the Eartha body. So they would be at the Ma-8 layer, but on D2 level Eartha. Now if we did that mark off where we saw where the one set of 15 geodesic layers went, then we did that each for the 5 layers. D1 Earth, D2 Earth, D3 Earth, D3 Earth, density Earth equals Eartha D1, and then Eartha D2. And then if you put all of those together, right, it gives you the interface of all of the planes. And at this point, you can hardly read everything. You have no space to write what is what. But it shows an interface of things, and it shows some fascinating information. We will cover it more tomorrow. But I want you to know where you're going when you take a journey. And we're going to do a journey to get the access keys for the Adashi temples. If this is Earth's core, right, we're going vertically up, we hit Earth's surface. It's easier to see on the other one, actually. Earth's surface is here, right? And we keep going up. We run into aquifers in the sky that have to do with the aquifer layers of the larger star, Eartha, around us. And it takes us all the way up to what would be the Ma-8 layer of Eartha D2. Now D2 on Eartha, just like D2 here, would be the physical one, the telluric realm that would be perceived as the physical one. So if we put that over here, that's where the Adashi temple crystal bases would be. In the middle, this would be the upper mantle, actually. Upper mantle, middle mantle. They are the middle mantle Adashi temples. And up here is where surface Eartha would be in relation to us. And if we could find where the Van Allen belts are, and they're down in here somewhere. There's better maps than this. These are just one of the first ones. I don't even know if I have, outer, I don't know if I have that here actually on this one. Yeah. Anyway, we can place the Van Allen belts in here at certain spots. So we can tell, kilometer-wise, how much what is. We can place the magnetosphere, what is considered the magnetosphere of Earth, runs the surface rock layer of Eartha. So it's all about angular rotation of particle spin and base pulse rhythm as far as why do we see Earth and why are we standing on Earth and not Eartha. And because there's so much damage to ourselves genetically on this planet and to this planet itself, there are a series of platforms called aurora zones or safe zones that run in between certain parts. Where if this is the vertical map going up, we have our core crystal beds here. These, by the way, are here's our surface. These would be the upper mantle crystal beds that correspond with the core crystal beds of the larger star Eartha, right? So its our core crystal area is this large, our ether crystals, where it would be this large, running literally in our up into our upper mantle. And this is where they had seeded the Nibiru and crystal grids on top of these. There would be our surface. Here's our ozone layer. Our ozone layer is not natural. It comes from a reverse light field that has to do with things called the nets that we'll talk about tomorrow because there's not time to go into that now, and it doesn't really matter. In fact, it doesn't matter to know that there are certain nets up there that they're literally meant to shift your angular rotation of particle spin to make sure you never get out into the natural passageways, but that you would instead get shifted into what is called a hibernation zone. And they are created by the nets, and the nets control the DNA as well. We'll talk more about those tomorrow when we talk about the seeds of suffering and that story. But for now, the happy part is that there have always been what are called these aurora. These are part of the Christ host rescue mission that was here, the Amenti rescue mission. But there are these aurora platforms that are called safe zones that run in between each. See, these would be squares that you could put in there, except if I put them in there, we need way too big of a mylar that wouldn't fit on the thing. So where this arrow is pointing that this is where it would be. Between these layers, there would be another one here. There would be another one here. Now this is in the thermosphere, right? This is referred to as the density 2 Ascension Earth Density 2 cloud cities. These would be the Ascension Earth Density 1 subterranean cities. Up here we have the Ascension Earth Density 3 ocean cities, which are called Aquifarion. That's where the Aquifarion races were hybrid races between the humans here and the Aquarian races on Eartha were brought together, and where they were seated, it was like a step down from where they were and a step up from where the angelic humans were here. So these will be the people that some of the people we're dealing with. There's actually a whole bunch of different ones of Adashi Masters, and we're still working with every council that we worked from the Guardian Alliance all the way on up. They're just the collective of the Christ councils. Collectively, all those Christ councils that are involved in this host, and that have been for 450 billion years, are referred to as the Crystal River Councils. And they're from the Ekaveka systems of 3 different Akasha matrices, and the Akasha level and the Akasha A levels of those matrices also. So they also go down into the hubs, and which are going into the core, the middle, and then the inner and the core domains. So this is a big rescue mission that has been going on for a long time. We are part of it. We are on a planet that is part of it. And these are our vertical maps, which are the last ascension chambers open in this system. There's a whole bunch happening with these that will be exciting. When you do, that's going to be progressively exciting. Now, when we see up here, for a moment, if we look here, if Earth's surface crust is here, all right, that means it's this layer down here in this upper, this physical crystal layer here that belongs to Earth's core crystal. There's something else here in Eartha that belongs to the next natural star up in its system. Now, if Eartha in the Cathara grid represents Stargate number 3, all right, in a Cathara grid with the 12 points on it, right directly vertically up from number 3 is number 6. There's a relationship, just like Earth and Eartha have, just like Earth and Eartha have, that is the embedded relationship, where the natural gates of Eartha interface with Sirius B in the same way, except Sirius B is is larger in size in terms of the interface, just like Earth is small compared to the size of Eartha. Well, Eartha, being a 3 density 1-3 planet, is small, or star is small compared to the size of Sirius B, etc. So these temples that appear, these crystal rock bases that appear in the mantle, they start in the middle mantle, Ma 8 layer, and go up into the Ka 9 layer. Right? These are actually the Syrian temples. These are the Syrian crystal temples, the Adashi temples, and they are connected directly into Sirius B, directly through the Eartha physical D2 mantle. And our temples are connected to them. We have temples too, but they were hijacked by the Nibiruan crew with the Nibiruan dietic crystal grids for a long time. We have those here too, and a smaller set of them down here. And these are the core crystals that connect all into the core crystals. All of this is built on that structure of the 15 sets of 4 inner embedded Jaleesic layers of the Rasha body and the light body that is built on it. So when you do your journey to the Adashi temples, it is here, following the Aurora platforms, that you will be able to go and to visit the first layer of what is called Adashi 7 temple. Each one of these Adashi temples runs on what is called a spanner gate. Do we have the shape of one of those there, honey? There are somewhere. It's a while back. A spanner gate, anyway, is that figure 8 shape that is the core flow, Navajo flow. One of those would run its center column, would be its Illyrian chamber, and its 8 shape would be the core flows around it. That is the shape of a spanner gate. We will see more of those when we go into the rest of the story tomorrow. But we will be using the spanner, what is called spanner 7, which is the one that runs on the 7-1 line. All right, you remember the adjugate twin line? So if you have a clock, it would be the event horizon number 7 span gate. and we go through the aurora platforms, which are the safe zone platforms that step over the reversed light fields that are caused by the nets, so you don't end up getting ensnared in hibernation zone. Because when people try to astral project or any of that stuff, they end up getting ensnared in hibernation zones. There's a small portion of your body that is your Rasha template that holds an image of you that is just like you are right now. That is a part of yourself that you're going to take and raise up into what is called a glide. And it's a very specific journey, because to get through the aurora platforms in a specific way without falling in the hibernation zones, particularly with the first journey, the access key journey, it's important to follow that particular route. You can't just go, ooh, okay, I'm going to imagine it vertically and bop myself up. Later you can do that, but there is a specific format to the journey, and it is so it gets you safely into the encryption zones of those that tip you over the hibernation zones, so you're going into the aurora platforms. There's something we'll talk about tomorrow too called Akusha platforms that link together the aurora platforms, and when they all link together, they form layers of what is called, or open here, layers of what is called Ascension Earth. Ascension Earth is in the Aquial matrix that is in between here and Andromeda. Eartha is in Andromeda. Earth is here, and they all interface at the same place, depending on which of these platforms are open, and that depends on which part of the flows are open. So we're in the process of something really big. I hope this has been enough to get you where you can enjoy the journey, because you know what it's about, not just some weird journey up there, out there. But this is very specific information, and the vertical maps are built on the very specific cosmic creation information that is the most precious spiritual paradigm that has been ever spoken on this planet. So I hope you've enjoyed today's information so far, and that you will enjoy what is to come, which is the Adashi access key journey. And then this evening after your dinner there will be the Eye of God journey, which personally is my favorite one so far, just because it felt really neat. So I hope you were able to stay for that one. That one I think runs about an hour also. So thank you, and we'll see you later. I'm going to turn it over to Az. Are they going to get a break before they go? Okay, what do they... they need a quick...
guys... I sense that I mean quick comfort break. We've got real time troubles. We've got labour and trade union, restaurant related time pressures. So we've asked for permission to be a half an hour late. We're already going to blow that. So if you need to get comfortable with the bathroom, go and come back real quickly, please.
Thank you for your patience. We're not doing too bad for Guardian Time. We're trying not to be on Guardian Time. Just so you know, if my voice sounds a little raspy, it's because I've been up all night doing... They put a workshop in the middle of the workshop, basically. So, not only are we covering the things that we were planning to cover, but we're covering a whole bunch of new material I'm just learning that is just off the charts as far as I'm concerned. So I will share with you, to the degree that I can, the new things that have come through. The reason they did this was because there are certain things, good morning, there are certain things happening in the Aquiferian Shield and in the planetary grids at this time. And they wanted us to be able to, to participate in the activations. It would make the journey to the Hall of Records that we're going to do before this day is over much more significant. So there were certain things in structure that we needed to understand that I didn't know about at all, so I've never taught it before. Where I was going to pick up from yesterday was we covered up to the gestation cycle, the Rasha body creation, all that stuff. We went into seeing how that fit into the planetary grids. And then the next thing to do was take a nice breeze quickly through the starborn cycle and find out about the diet, the Maya, the monad real fast. Well, boy, did they do something with that sequence. We find out what happens with the starborn sequence before, and the information that we had before. We had, with that starborn sequence, up to day 9, as they call it, of first creation. All right? They never said what happens after that, because it wasn't just on the seventh day or whatever there was rest. Not at all in full creation. I don't think they ever rest, honestly. But a while back, they had let us know that there are actually 15 days of first creation. And they were counting each part of the inner light body that formed as one of the days, and we got up to 9 when the Unisai was born. And then they kind of jumped into Rasha and never got into what happened to the rest of the days between, like 10 through 15. We found out. And the reason we needed to find out now was because there are certain structures that are the final linking pieces to understanding first the birth of the spiritual body and the birth of the structure. So we understand the structure that we're dealing with, because not only is it the structure of the cosmos and how that was born and perpetually rebirths itself, not only is it the structure of your own bodies, but it's also the structure of the Hall of Records and something called the Halls of Rishite. Now, I had never heard of the Halls of Rishite, so they had to show the anatomy that would reveal certain things, and then they got into things that I will have to read off the graphs, because I can't even articulate them, even paraphrase them. That has to do with hydrolase conversion, what this is, what it has to do with Iridanus, what it has to do with what's called a celestaline wave. A long time ago in the work they mentioned about the celestaline wave and how that was a certain transient element that would form in the body and would activate the DNA, allowing it to make the shift in angular rotation of particle spin that would allow for ascension and Stargate passage. Well, we just got a whole new block on what that means. And all of it came down to we needed to understand something about the things called the Halls of Richelieu. And because this is where we are going to be journeying. We were already planning to go into what are called the General Hall of Records. And that is one level of the halls and the chambers. They hadn't talked about this before because they didn't think the particular activations that were happening in the planetary shield and in the Aquafarian shield, and also happening in Andromeda. They didn't think they were going to happen yet. They knew it was sometime between now and possibly the FOL period, which would be January of 2008. Well, they're happening now. And this is the best time when the wave is first releasing to be able to move into the higher level of visiting the halls. So we had to find out what, first of all, the sons of Rishite are and what the halls of Rishite are, because we're going to not only move into the halls of records that correspond to to the local Aquafarian shield host, but we are going to experience and leave our encryption within the halls of Rishite, which will do something quite wonderful with the activation levels and the healing levels in our bodies when it comes to repairing the DNA and getting back into the ascension track. So I'm going to pick up where I was going to pick up in the first place, and there's a whole set there that wasn't in there in the first place. There's a lot of green scribbles on the graphs because I had to put the information right on the mylars. There was no time to do anything else, and I was having a terrible time with the pen. Pens don't like to write on mylars, even the ones that are meant for that. So I appreciate you giving me the extra time, considering the fact that they stuffed a whole new workshop right in the middle of this one. I think we did pretty well as far as the level of data. I feel very just kind of spaced out from exhaustion, so if I seem a little under the weather, that's why. But I will get on with it because we have the pack of graphs that I would like to get through with you between now and the end of the day, before the dinner break, is probably unrealistic. However, I will get through the most important ones, and that will start with giving us the most important information, which is understanding the rest of the structure that has to do with after we go through the gestation cycle of, the spiritual body is born here, births at this point, and then we go through the gestation cycle in which the Rasha body structure is born, and that brought us up to this point, where this is where the dyad is born, and at the same time that the dyad is born, we also get into not only are the inner light body structures birthing at this point, but simultaneously the outer light body structures, or the Big Bangs, are birthing as well. The Big Bang point is actually in one of these time cycles, is actually at the birth of the dyad. So there's a whole series, normally, okay, the natural starborn sequence, what we've known for a while as the starborn sequence, where you go dyad, then myad birds, then monad birds, and each one of these are a tachyon cycle, a set of 12 harmonic key cycles, or quantum generation cycles. Now we had the plugging in of what parts of the light body, the outer light body, were birthing at the same time, and that was not too challenging, because at least we knew what those parts were. But then they added a whole bunch of other things that occur during this period. And so I'm going to begin here, go into the starborn cycle, and you'll see where we deviate from the ones who have been with us before. We'll see where we went off into other structures we didn't even know existed that are part of that starborn sequence. And it is in those structures that we will find at least enough information to wrap our heads around a little bit what the halls of Rishite are in connection to the rest of the structure we've learned so far. We know that the Akashic record is the first cell on the Adore side. Right? We also know that the Hall of Records refer to the 8-cell cluster that is connected to that, and there's a side on Adore and a side on Ettore. In simple terms, when we get into the Rishite layers, the Rishite is a word that came up over here, and is a part of the spiritual body structure that forms right before the birth of the Lumeridana, right? So it was that one that was kind of a messy graph, and they haven't given us much information on, but that was the 4th trimester. Well, there's a whole set of things that occur involving that structure of the spiritual body, and it is actually through those structures that matter, as we know it here, is created. So, when we have the two at the center point, when we were speaking about the spiritual body creation, we had the Akashic record and the Akushik record here, and then we had the 8-cell clusters for each around, which are the halls. There's a point in the days of creation where the Akashic record and the Akushik record open to become one record that is called the Rishaic record, and the sets of halls that go with each side open unto each other. And in simple terms, those things represent the halls of Rishite. But they are connected to a whole process that involves the word and the substance called hydrolase, and something called hydrolase conversion that has to do with the production of the celestaline wave in the body. And there are certain activations that are taking place in today and running through tonight that they're early. They're actually coming early in the Aquiferian shield, and it's because they're coming early in relation to Eartha and Andromeda system M31. So because of that, they've given us this extra workshop within a workshop so that we could participate, for those who want to, in the journeys that involve that, because they will hugely accelerate your own Rasha body and spirit body activation levels and clear certain things that we will see later, because after the break part we will deal with the bloom of doom and what that has to do with M31, and we will have that sequence of information. But we're first going to get through as much of this graph sequence as we can, so you can get to the point where we have the new graphs in the starborn sequence. Because even though right now we're talking about them in a cosmic level, these also apply to the smallest levels, your own body systems, and also the planetary body system and the sun body system and those kind of things. So all of these structures that you'll learn about will lead us to one thing that are referred to as the sons of Rishite. And they're a part of these structures. They are a part of your body, your field structures, and some of them run through your body. And there is a problem with 4 levels of them because of the bloom of doom and what is called the Procyon false memory matrix that has to do with the center of the Milky Way and Sagittarius A star and some other things that are in the center of the black hole that's in the center of the Milky Way. These things would prevent us from being able to activate the Akashic records, to be able to access the Hall of Records, and to be able to go through the natural processes of ascension that are our birthright. And they have been denied us for a very long time on this planet. So, because of the activations that are coming through now, we are able to use the strength of those frequencies that will be coming through from the cosmic level of the spiritual body into our realms down here. And we will be able to purge or clear from the natural structures in our own fields that are called the sons of Rishite. We'll be able to purge the mutations of the bloom of doom much more quickly than we would have been able to otherwise. And we'll probably understand more of this as we go through it, because it's all coming in live. I literally just jumped in the shower for 2 seconds because I didn't get a shower yesterday, so I wasn't going to do that, not 2 days in a row. But so anyway, this is what we're going to cover, and this is why the delay was there. Here we go with the heats. There goes the jacket. Excuse me. What's kind of interesting is listening to the coughing that's happening. Because that's been happening with me too, and I can always say, well, it's because I smoke. But one of the seals that we are going to be releasing is in this area up here, in between chakra 4 and 5. And it's kind of just interesting to hear the what's going on. Right? So if you're having any issues happening, it may very well be related. Okay? He left. Okay. Well, anyway, I'll use this graph to show you really quickly. If we were going to just chart after the Rasha body is born, after the spirit body, then the Rasha body here, at the birth of the dyad, there would be the natural starborn cycle where you have birth of the dyad, then the myad, then the monad, then down here, we can't read it, says the Amareya hub cell, then over here the Adon 144, and then up here you'd have the Edon 1728, and then up here you would have what we've called the Rasha, or the Rashala, actually, but what it is called is the Aton, A-T-O-N, and it refers to the merging or the unified body of Adore and Attore put together. So that is what that inner light cell structure that has 20,736 particae, that is what it is referred to as the Aton. So you have the Adon, the Edon, and the Aton. And these are all parts of the inner light body structure. At the same time that these are birthing, the outer light body structures are also birthing. So while you have this occurring here, the dyad, you have the Eucatharista body birthing here at this point, which are two of the Akasha Aya sets. And then you have the tachyon cycle, or 12 harmonic key cycles, that would go with that, and they are the Eucatharista and dyad cycles. Then you would have birth of the myad, and the Akasha A would birth. So you'd have the 4 Akasha A inside of the light body structure of the Akasha Ayas would birth, and then you would have their key phase cycle, where this would be tachyon cycle 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Then you would have here the birth of the monad and the akashas. And there's actually 24 akasha god seeds, where you have 4 of the akasha A, and each of them get a set of 4 plus 2 at the center of the akashas, and it ends up with 16 outside and 8 inside, and that's 24. So there's material from way back where they talked about the 24 god seeds, and that brought that into coherence, where now we can see, yes, there's 24, because you can only count on the echo maps, you can only see 16 of them, and the other 8 are in the centers of the akasha As. That's why, akasha A's. That's why we couldn't see them. So you have the monad and the akashas birthing, and then they have their phase cycles. Then you have here the Amareya hub cell birthing, and this goes with the ekavekas. So in all of the akashas, this is where their ekavekas are born. And you have 4 vekas and 2 ekas, which is the 4 plus 2 again. Then over here, and some of this is where it started to get crazy, where you see little green scribbles everywhere. That means new incoming with no time whatsoever to attempt to clean up a graph enough to do anything with it. Oh yeah, this, if I can pronounce these, if I can even read these, I'll be in good shape. But over here, where normally the next cycle you would have, tachyon cycle, would lead to the quantum building and birth of the Adon unit. And if you notice, for people who are new to this, there's a progression where it's like the dyad has, it starts with the Tarn had 3 particae. The dyad has 6. So it's like a × 2 replication or quantum building. The myad has 12. So it's another ×2, 6 × 2. That's 12 × 2 is 24 particae power. 24 × 2 is 48. And then we have a ×3 one. 48 × 3 is 144 particae power. So just so you know what those numbers refer to if you're not familiar with this information. So we have the Adon that births here. And at this time, the parts of the outer light body that birth are parts that we hadn't heard about yet. And one of them was 4 plus 2, the center, Illuminata. Now, the Illuminata are the ethos, eros cells, and they're the ones that we've talked about in the Cathar 2-3 program, and I've been trying out for ages to figure out where did they come from. Right? They're obviously there because we phased them with the pillow of power breathing and stuff, but where did they come from? This is where they birth in. They're part of the light body structure that births in, where you get every, let's say, and these are the Illuminata, the ethos, eros, Illuminata, are the density spirit bodies and light bodies that go with the radial bodies. So the Illuminata would be a set of them that are down in what it's called the ethos grid, or in the upper Vecca quadrants, it would be where the eros grid is. And then you have what are also called the Illuminatas, right? The Illuminatas refer to the spirit body cells from which the light body cells emerge. I mean, the light body, radial body cells that we've talked about in the density radial bodies in the Cathar 2-3 manual. So this is where these structures start to emerge that they hadn't identified that far into the structure of the light bodies when they gave us the Eucatharista bodies. So then we get up to the next phasing cycle. And up here, I didn't even have time to write in the new stuff. It's on some of the other ones, but I didn't have time to transfer it over to here, so we'll look at those in a minute. This is where the Edon, 1728 Partakai, births. And again, we had 144 here, times 12. It's times 12 replication in quantum building, and that gives you 1728 Partakai in the Edon, and that's the inner light cell. And at this time, you have each density Illuminata births an illuminary. Density, time vector, spirit body. And it's a probability cluster. So what they did was they showed a bit. They gave us some basic structure, again scribbled in green at the base of another graph, that shows a little bit of what these look like in relation to the echo maps of the God World Gate structure that we understood as far as the outer light body structure. So we have an idea of what they are. And then there are things that occur up here, and what's going to be interesting too is I want to get to the point where we can show you this cycle as we understand it in the creation of the cosmic body. This is pretty neat when you see it in relation to what we introduced in Virginia Beach, when it's in relation to what happens when an egg and a sperm come together to create the beginnings of a fetal pattern, because this entire structure and this entire process that you're witnessing here unfolds just as it did here, because when those two things come together, it creates another distinction point. Like the first Partakai, it creates a distinction point within the consciousness field of God's source, and this whole thing unravels. And under natural circumstances, you would have the entire structures that you're seeing here, from the spirit body to the Rasha bodies to the physical bodies. This would actually be the birth point, where you would have the gestation cycle. And this would be actually way down here, is where in the Navina cycles, is where the egg and sperm would come together. In fact, they have to come together at that spot in the cycle. So we'll talk more about those. So I just wanted you to know that even though we're talking about large cosmic structure and about portions even of your own anatomy that you can't really see right now, it plugs right in to the parts that you can see the product of. You can see your bodies, and your bodies are the product of one of these cycles that occurred just like the first Partakai initiated its creation cycle from this point of focus, and then began going through the cycle. The same thing happens at that point of focus when sperm and egg come together. So we all have these structures of spirit body directly connected to us. Our matter form actually manifests within them. Next one, please. Okay, let me see. Now, this is just to bring us back to remembering when we say the spirit body that birthed at the vertical axis, right, at the end of the Siddha cycle. This is the Lumeradana body that birthed, and it has all of its vectors and all of those things. So I just wanted to bring us back to remembering that for a minute. Next one, please. I have to go fast. Yeah, and you see how many graphs I have to get through before dinner? Wait. Now, it was also to remind you that at the center of that Illumeradana, that is where the Taran births. And this is a very large version of the Tarn that would be quite small in relation to that large Lumeridana spirit body structure. And the Tarn is the light seed. And it is from the light seed that we start to begin to get the structure that creates from the Rashas. We have the Rasha bodies already. They formed in the gestation cycle. But with the Tarn that was born with the Lumeridana, it goes through its first pulse phase cycle and forms the harmonic keys that we spoke about. I'm going to whip through those graphs really quick just so people that might not have seen them at all can have a bit of a visual and where I can identify where the word prana comes from. And so this is the Lumeridana, was the large body. This is the light seed that forms at the center of it. From there you had the Rasha cycle that formed, and at the same time of the Rasha cycle that we covered before, this is doing a pulse phase cycle and it's going through 12 harmonic key cycles that 12 of them together constitute one tachyon cycle. And that is a quantum building and replication cycle. At the end of a set of 12 harmonic key cycles, there is enough quantum sparks built and held within the light seed that it hits what is called a tachyon flash point. And all of that quantum comes together, pulls through as a backflow through the creation point, and then gets a backflow return that is a times whatever of its original quantum that went in. So when the 3 Partakai power of the Taran they do their phase cycle, and at the end of it reach the point where they've built enough to open creation point door, that 3 Partakai power comes back as the Tarn plus a times 2 Tarn quantum, which would be 6, right? And this is how the evolution of the starborn inner light structures emerge. And at the same time, we're getting the outer light structures emerging with from the point of axis 2, which would be the Big Bang. Okay, now what I'm going to show you here is, most of you have seen this before. This is the Tarn. This is its 15 Jaleesic layers, part of them inside of the Tarn, part of them extending outside of the Tarn. This is where we get the structures of what become the Rasha body when we go through that first phase cycle, the 15 Jaleesic layers that give us the rings, which would be the Jaleesic rings, and the crystalline bands or spans between them. So all of the Rasha structure is based on the structure inherent to the Partaki. And the Partaki is like a little small central cell in the center of the Tarn. It is the Tarn contracting that causes the 3 Ina-Ka balls that are outside, which are Partakai, to rub through each other with friction and rub through the center ball that has the inner Jaleesic layers and 9 inner Jaleesic layers, and that creates spark quantum. So every time the Tarn contracts, it creates a quantum of energy, and these have the structures of what are called Illurian lines inside of them, which would be the set of 12 lines, and it is on those lines that the sparks assemble. So there are 12 sparks made every time the Tarn contracts. So after cycles of that, quantum is built up within those lines, even within the Partaki of the Tarn, and that is what gives us the quantum building cycle. Next one, please. This is just showing what it looks like when it expands. This is in its expansion state. And when it contracts, it does this. It comes up, all the balls kind of come up into the center. So that's all that was showing. Next one, please. Okay, this is a closer look at the center 15 Jaleesic layers. These are, they call it the ovum of living light within the Partaki, but it is also the structure, as we have seen before, of the Rasha body and the Rasha body templates. And the Rasha body templates are the dark matter templates that are the structure for the same configurations of what are called the base shields in the light body. So that whole structure came from the structure of the Partaki of the Tarn, which actually came from the larger structure that is inherent to the Lumeridana, where it actually has a set of huge 15 Jaleesic layers running through it. Actually, probably 4 sets, but they only showed us 1 in some of the larger drawings. So it was just to connect these that you've seen before. I do want to point out, because we will be using them for something, this is basically a 2 to 3 part activation that is coming through the grids, and the technique that we're going to run has 2 parts to it. One part involves doing the journey, a new journey, to the halls. The other part is using very specific sound tones in order to activate the encryption of the halls within your system, to bring it into activation within your system, to begin the it's kind of like, I think it culminates, they're just telling me this here, that right now, because of the mutation, we have actually not been able to get our encryption into the halls of Rishatai, which means there's no reference there to our energy signature. And this is the beginning of getting ourselves back online with the natural cosmic structure. So there will be tones used, and the tones come from the rings and the spans. The spans are the Gelesic radiation, crystalline radiation bands that run between the rings. And the rings all have specific names or sound tones that are the audible portion of their encryption. And by using those, the ring tones and the span tones, we will be able to do part of the activation. There's something else you're going to get, and unless you were at the last 12 Tribes H class, they just came out. They're called the command tones, the Jeshua Code command tones. They're a set of very special tones that are used in conjunction with these that allow for certain special things to happen with the Iridanis body. So I just wanted to remind you early on that we have the span tones, which are the bands in between, and the ring tones, which are the tones that go with the Gelesic radiation levels. They go with the ones of the Rasha bodies, and the Rasha bodies control the same layers within the light body base shield structures. So when you're activating one, you're activating the other as well, which brings the entire Rasha structure and spiritual body connection faster into the matter structure. So all of these techniques are meant to do that, to begin bringing the spiritual body online as quickly as possible with the physical manifest body through the Rasha body dark matter template. Next one, please. This is just to see, this is why I'm not going to go through right now the process of the harmonic key cycles. We did cover that in several workshops. It's just to show you what keys do. We start with harmonic key generation, which is the sparking of the tarn. And then we go through the formation of harmonic keys, and then harmonic key, what is called resolution. Then there's a progression of the keys, which is called, there's key ordination, key distillation, key crystallization, key compression, all of these things that eventually lead up to the quantum of energy that is created by these keys eventually becomes materialized and becomes the materialized currents and frequencies that become the electromagnetic spectrum that forms the matter base in the outside worlds that we can identify. So next one, please. Excuse me. This is really quick in a nutshell. The early parts of the harmonic key cycles, just in case people haven't seen those, because there might be some people who haven't, we have the tarn doing its pulsing and making sparks, and it makes sparks along each of the 12 lines, sets of 12 sparks. Every time the tarn contracts and makes sparks, it fills one of the rings with sparks. So after a set of 12 sparks, you have the entire set of the Pardiki rings are filled with quantum, or stored quantum. And then there's a process by which the sparks assemble in groups of 12 to form what are called harmonic keys, and that would be here. It's called harmonic key assembly, and you get bass tone and overtone keys, and they each have a different quantum, and they're very specific quantum of energy, each one. One's mana energy with 33 1/3 Pardiki power, one is Ire energy with 11 2/3 Pardiki power. Ire energy has a positive electrical charge, negative electrical charge. Mana energy has a positive electrical charge. And it is the interactions between these that create another type of energy through a process of what is called key resolution, where they resolve the difference between their quantum in a way where they form a substance called prana. Prana comes from, if you take the mane that has 33 1/3 Pardiki power, and you subtract this amount from it, the same amount as the Ire, 11 2/3, you end up with the 21 2/3, and that is called mana, just mana. Plain mana, not mana, but mana. All right, and it has a positive charge. The part of the mana that was taken away bonded to the 11 2/3 of the Ire. And that part that was taken away, the 11 2/3, but it has a positive charge, is called the prana jewel. That is where prana comes from, just so you understand when we talk about prana and mana and things like that. When we talk about the prana seed, it is talking about a specific type of energy that has a specific quantum and a specific charge, and that's where it comes from through this process of harmonic key resolution, where they switch quantums a bit in order to go into storage. So the keys will store for a while until more spark cycles of the Tarn build up enough keys where sets of 12 keys will then come together and form a tachyon. So one tachyon forms in each of the Allurian lines of the partakey, and it's formed by 12 harmonic keys. So quantum is still building and being stored. And the prana is also referred to, by the way, the prana joules. All right, this has to do with the joules of heat that are released when science talks about calories, and also about thermodynamics and those kind of things. So it's the prana joules with 11 and 2/3 quantum. 11 and 2/3 quantum. Pardon me, I'm a bit tired. Okay, so they're just showing you how tachyons form. At a certain point, when a set of 12 tachyons form, they build up enough quantum in themselves that they create an oscillation in the gelesic layers inside of the partakey of the Tarn, and it causes the creation point to open, and then something called a flash point occurs. The flash point is when the creation point pops open and everything, all of the keys come in as backflow, and it pulls the entire Tarn into source consciousness field, and it is there that the Tarn quantum gets replicated times 2, and the Tarn comes back out as backflow return, and with it comes backflow return of 2 times its quantum, and that's where the dyad is born. So I just wanted you to, if you haven't seen any of this, to understand what we mean when we talk about key cycles, and how we go from having a Tarn with 3 partakei to all of a sudden a dyad is born, and that has 6 partakei, and then the myad is born that has 12 partakei. Every time it is about a harmonic key cycle that goes through forming tachyons, reaches critical mass, building of quantum, opens creation point door, takes the whole thing in, and pops it back out again with a quantum increase of itself plus itself back again. And when you get to the point where you have lots of those units together, where you have the Tarn and then the dyad and the myad and the monad and all these cells, when they all pop back off and come back out again, they don't need more than one of themselves and the next one they were building, and they end up with a lot more quantum every time they get replicated. That quantum gets broken down and becomes spark currents that come out in the crystal spiral and begin to feed the light body structure. So these things are all connected to other things that you've seen as well. And I just wanted you to go through really quick the process by which quantum is built through the harmonic key cycles. And it's the same thing that actually happens in our bodies, or when we are after the point of fertilization of egg by sperm. This whole process of harmonic key generation and quantum building is what actually expands the cellular structure and causes the cells to first split and then make more of themselves in order to grow the fetal body. So anyway, next one please. I'm going to have to go fast on some of these because I want to get to the most important parts. This is just showing up close what you saw there in little form, and I'm not going to go through every one of these. There's very specific, these plug into the fire letter sequences, how many sparks in fire letter sequences, how many sparks form chelons, all of that stuff. That is highly technical information that was given with these, and I couldn't even read that print at this point because my eyes are so tired. But it isn't important, and that isn't meant to be a part of this program going heavy into detail on that. But it is good to let you know, if you haven't seen this information at all, to let you know that it's there. So, and it is, and this is, I don't know if these were ever published yet. These weren't. Where were they? We've been working on them for ages. No. They will eventually be part of published manuscript, but they are already covered and discussed more fully in various workshops from Tenerife, February 2006, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, so from February 2006, when this material was released, there are workshops that have discussed it in various contexts. So if you're interested, there's more of it. Next, past these couple. Yeah, I don't need to go through these. That's just showing you the key resolution cycle by which prana is formed from the mane. Yeah, I don't have to go through all the big ones, honey, because I just went through them, the summary. All right. This has something to do with every third harmonic key cycle. Remember, you have a set of 12 harmonic key cycles that finally form a tachyon cycle, and that is the point where the first flash point occurs. So it takes 12 harmonic key cycles to get up to a point where you have enough tachyon quantum built where it can go through a flash point for a replication to come out as the next cell structure. What this is just showing what is called key ordination, and it's a process of by which the keys phase and they build more quantum. This happens every third harmonic key cycle. And there are 4 key ordinations, one for each trimester in the gestation cycle. So as the Rasha body is building and doing its thing, there are 4 ordination cycles in that take place within that first tachyon cycle. And every other tachyon cycle has every third harmonic key cycle in it is an ordination cycle. Next one, please. Yeah, this is just referring to you have your 12 tachyons, they reach critical mass, and they open the creation point, create a flash point, and that's when the whole thing pulls in and goes into source consciousness field and does quantum replication. Next one, please. Try to get past these. Excuse me. Now, this is a messy one of the Yucatharista body structure and of the top, the big part of the echo maps of the God World Gates that we've released a long time ago. And this is just meant to remind us that even though when we're usually doing the starborn cycle, we're watching the quantum replication that has to do with creation of the inner light body structure, that they have let us know, they have informed us that during this workshop, the process of the Yucatharista body is also growing at the same time. So by the time that you get done with the first tachyon cycle, the first flash point, where the Taran goes in to replicate its quantum, when it comes back out as the dyad, the Taran comes back out as itself, but then it has the dyad with it that has times 6, that is when the Yucatharista body births. And then progressively, as each of the other inner light cell structures birth, the different parts within that structure birth, the smaller ones birth. So one Yucatharista body actually has another part to it here that would point in the other direction, and they spin together. The other part would be the Adore side, and this would refer to the Ettore, or the Ettore matrix and the Adore matrix. And each one of them, a single one, is called an Akasha Ea. And each Akasha Ea, and the next quantum replication with a dyad would come back with its 4 Akasha A inside. And then the next stage would be the 4 Akasha A would each get 4 Akasha, and then the 4 Akasha would each get their Eka-Veka system. And so there's this progressive expansion of quantum that's done through harmonic key cycles or tachyon cycles. Next one, please. This is where my night went away. This is where tangent began, where workshop within a workshop was introduced. This used to be a simple graph, right? What this graph does, if you haven't seen it before, is it's a simple explanation of showing you we had one tachyon cycle. We talked about where the Taran was born. Up at that, I can't even reach them. This is high. This is a big screen. There we go. Thank you. Where the Taran was born here, and it went through the first tachyon cycle, and that's when it went flash point and came back as the dyad, right? Over here, before that, you had the 0-point axis where the whole spiritual body was being born during the Siddha cycle, and then the spiritual body birthed here with the Taran at its center. All right, so what you're looking at here is simply the same thing on a spiraling Cathara grid to show you the proportions of expansion between the sets of cells, but this one corresponds to the Siddha cycle. So see the little red dot over here? That refers to it's on this axis, but it was way down in here. And that little tiny spot in there was this is the 0-point cycle where the dyad forms. And the dyad was where you had Partakai 1 that got split by Partakai 2. That formed, not the dyad, I'm sorry, the triad. The triad that started the phase cycle of the Siddha cycle. So this is just showing you, broken out on the same grid, what is happening here. The first cycle of the Taran took place at this axis. The Taran was born here, and then its key cycle, its harmonic key cycle, took place in through here. It's called Tachyon 1 cycle. So it's between axis, there's 0 axis, this is axis 1, the Taran axis is axis 2, the dyad axis. So here we are at axis 1, where the Taran is, and that's the Taran light seed, right, and its structure, and also its encryption. At a certain point they had us doing the encryptions for each of these. They were big, and they all had to be shrunk down once they were made big. Millions of graphs involved with this stuff, I think. But this is the Taran, and when it finishes its tachyon cycle, then it would flash off and come back out and create the dyad. The dyad would be on this axis, and see it expanded. So you're watching the expansion rates and the proportions in that spiral expansion, the rotational expansion. The next tachyon cycle would produce the quantum building from the dyad to the myad, then from the myad to the monad, from the monad to the amareya cell. And this is where we're up to 48 Partakai, right, which started at 3. And then we go from that all the way to the next one, and we're already at axis 6 here. That's where the Adon 144 Partakai is born. Over here you have the 1728 Partakai, where you went through the times 12 replication at this point. And then from here to here, from axis 7 to 8, is where you have what they had called before the Rashala, simply put, and it's spelled different than a lot of the other Rashas. What the whole unit is called is the Aton. Right, and this is where you get Aton Ra and all those kind of things that were part of the Egyptian Ascension School teachings. Right, so even Egypt was represented in there, ancient Egypt. You know. Now, when we get through this, each one of these, they describe them as the days of creation, starting with the Taran. All right, and so the Taran would be the first day of creation. It goes through its tachyon cycle, and then it bursts out the dyad. The dyad would be the second day of creation, etc. And they're not referring to these as literal days as we know them here, of 24-hour periods. They're referring to them in the context of how the Bible talks about on the first day, there was this or whatever God created, right? That kind of thing. So they're trying to show where this fits in the first creation cycle. But there are actually 15 days in the first creation cycle, and there was no rest on Sunday. God worked on Sunday too. Right? That would be Sunday. Right? You didn't stop there at all. It was really busy on Sunday. Sorry, I get a little funny when I'm too tired. Now, what we've learned since the last time I looked at this graph, before this deluge of information, we've learned that the light body structures, the outer light body structures, have been growing along with this, where we had, if I can read them, we had the Taran birth with the spirit body, so the spirit body had born there. Here, this point right here is where the two Akasha Aya birth, or the Yukatarista body, and that is considered the Big Bang point. After you had the Rasha cycle, because the Rasha body was forming during the Rasha gestation cycle, while the Taran was doing its first phasing, that is the Rasha gestation cycle. And when it comes to babies and bodies and growing, that is the period that this whole period, actually from here to here, is in the womb, and that is the Big Bang point, is the birth point, is the point when the baby leaves the body, or should naturally leave the body. So it also applies to smaller scale things, not just universes. So we got through these, and then we started to get into, we've heard of the two Akasha births, when they birth out with the dyad. Then with the myad, you had the 4 plus 2 Akasha A in each Akasha. Then with the monad, you had the 4 plus 2 Akasha God seeds within the Akasha A's. That's all right so far. We've heard of all those things. Then here with the Amareya cell, which is the 48 Partakai, we had 4 Veka and 2 Eka in each Akasha. So the light body is actually the outer light body is filling itself out. Its cells are forming and growing as the inner light body structures are growing. Then it gets interesting. It gets strange. Words get strange. And encryptions get stranger, as we'll see on another graph. All right, here, when we hit the 144 Edon point, where the Edon inner light body births out, this is where we get 4 plus 2 ethos, eros, illuminana, density, spirit bodies, 4 density radial body light bodies that are called illuminata in each Eka, Veka, Akasha, Akasha A, and Akasha Aya. So God got really busy at this point. And then this is where we get into what are called the illuminary 12-cell probability clusters in each density illuminana and radial body in illuminata. Right, so each one of those gets a set of 12 of these, and it was like, oh my God. And of course, this happens in each Eka, Veka, Akasha, Akasha A, and Akasha A. Very, very busy Sunday. Then here, it got even wackier, where I had to find out a whole bunch of other stuff just to get to here. Right? And there's something else that grows in the spirit body. At this point, there's something called the cosmic unicay that creates all of the seed atoms for the inner, the middle, the outer, and the outer domains, but all the core, the core, the inner, the middle, and the outer domains, and the Adashi domain. So there's this other bang type thing that happens from day 9 onward, and then it gets absolutely crazy. And I will do my best, when we get past day 9, I will do my best to read to you what is on the board and try to explain what little bits I might still be able to wrap my brain around. Because some of it, it's important in the sense that it explains to you processes that we're going to be beginning with our bodies as far as healing. So with our bodies that will happen as a result of the natural, getting your encryption back online with the cosmic Hall of Records. And that is what we're going to be doing with the journey. And it's an Iridanus journey that I don't even know what it looks like yet, but that's where we're aiming for this. That's why they wanted us to understand these structures. Now, what happens here, we're still on day 8. Now, in between day 8 and day 9, before what was just simply called the unicay before, which is the smaller version, that is the seed atom for the inner domain, from the core domain to the inner, there's also the unicay, which is a huge cosmic thing, and it's 30 cells, but it's huge. In here is what's called a flame cycle, and here's where I started to learn new stuff. And I think most of that is on the other, but let me see what other little scribbles I have here. Domain and domain. Oh, yeah, and the domain Illumeridanas. All right, so when this births at that day 9 axis, that is when all of the domains birth their spirit bodies as well. And that starts the cycles. And actually back here is where they each start their Siddha cycle, or not even their Siddha cycle, their Navina cycle. So while some of these things are birthing, I don't know if I marked it on this one or not, but I think it's here that the Navina cycle starts for the other domains all at the same time. And here, I think, is where the Siddha cycle started. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's this one or this one. See, they weren't too, and that's not the information that was most important. But, all right, Siddha, Christar, yeah, where am I? Yeah, Siddha cycle, yeah, okay. So the Siddha cycle did start with this one. And this is the Siddha cycles for the smaller balls. Remember the little Yuga bodies? And then the Adashi bodies going backward, and the other side of them that are on the Adori side. Well, this is the same cycle that you just saw here, and the big cosmic one starts to take place in all of them simultaneously, creating a structure like this massive Yucatharista structure with a spirit body structure in each one of those smaller domains. So the light body and the spirit body are filling themselves out at this point. All right, so we're going to look at this for a minute, what happens in here, and that leads to the birth of the cosmic unicay, and that's just the beginning. That's the new story within the story. The next one, please. This is just showing the areas on the light body structure of the Yucatharista body and the Ekamaps of the God World Gates, which structures birthed, with which, on which days, basically, and with which parts of the light body. You had the Taran that birthed there. Then on day 2, you had this structure birth. Then on day 3, you had this structure birth, which is 4 of these, right? And then on day 4, you have these birth, the Akashas, Akasha God seeds. And then on day 5, we had the Ekaveka systems birth. And here's where it started to get fun. Remember how we had day 6? Yeah, here's where, what do these look like, right? Because obviously if they birthed, they fit on these maps someplace. And finally, we find out where what was called the ethos grid and the cells that live on that. And then if you were dealing with the one up here, it would be Eros, right? Remember the ethos and Eros currents were taught, we were taught about them, but not exactly where they came from. We were taught about them in Kathara 2.3. Well, this is where the ethos and Eros grids come from. They are part of the ethos grids, the ethos and eros grids, are part of the structure of the 4+2 Illuminiana density spirit bodies. Okay, so these are the density spirit bodies. They also have the counterpart here of the Illuminata bodies that are the radial bodies, the spiritual bodies behind the radial bodies that we've learned about in light body structure, and the radial bodies we are activating in flame body activation techniques and those kind of things. So that's where they formed. I can just see there's more diagrams that have to be made. This is why they stopped at the end of K23 and decided, no, we're not going to try to get into the unisons and stuff right now. There's a few pieces missing, like this entire Rasha body structure, like the entire spirit body structure, before you could make sense of what the balls within balls and bones of the Kathara grids were trying to show us. So that's why they kind of said, yeah, let's just leave those diagrams for like 5 years from now. But anyway, so eventually we'll fit them, but at least we know where the ethos and eros come from and where that happens within the creation cycle. And then, if that weren't difficult enough, each one of these, all right, this is one Illuminary 12-cell probability cluster, and each one of those that happens in each one of these births a set of these. Right? These are probabilities. These are where we get the different probabilities from the same, like main events. You have different probabilities that you can, depending on your base pulse rhythm, you can end up seeing that probability as your manifest reality field rather than others. And you technically have a probable self in every one of them. And the process of bringing yourself together is accreting all of the frequencies. If these are a set of 12, right? Each of these have a set of 12. You would actually be bringing in the lowest from like the one that's running the number 1 Allurian chamber. You would bring in the frequencies of that, and then you would experience the number 2 probability, and then you'd experience yourself as being in the number 3 probability until you pulled yourself all together and you go back to the middle probability and then do another cycle of them. Right? So creation is really, really big. So this is the cosmic body structure, but it's also the structure of our own spirit bodies and light bodies and those kind of things. And every time a fetus is created, it implies one of these are created too. Right? Right. Okay, next one, please. I think we can go. Yeah, day 8, I didn't show anything here. On day 8, the domain cetus cycles start. So it's on day 8 that the domain cetus cycles start. That's for the little ones within the larger structure. Right. Day 9, the cosmic Unisei 30-cell cluster births, and cluster births. Light body. Okay, it's a light body births, and it also births out the domain level seed atoms, which are the inner domain would have the Unisai, the middle domain would have the Umshadi, and the outer domain would have the Yanesa, and then they didn't even name the ones that go with the Adashi return cycles yet. And of course there would be the whole set of them that's over on the Adore side as well, across on the other end of the vector and the other event horizon. So it's not even done yet. This is showing the flame cycle. And here's where, just in case, I brought my glasses. Because we're going into, I won't even attempt to point at pictures and describe. I will simply read and then try to point at pictures and describe. We've seen these flame cycle pictures before, and what they have to do is, at that point where you reach day 9, or it's actually between day 8 and day 9, which means before that Unisai is born, before the Unisei is born, and after the Aton cluster of 20,736, and after whatever it was that just birthed with that structure, where the cetus cycles are starting in the little domains, there's the crystal spiral forms, where you have the currents that are spiraling out from all of those seeds that you just, from the light cells that you just saw, the inner light cells that you saw grow. They start opening their crystal spiral currents, or their spark currents, and they form the crystal spiral. And then the Adore side does the same thing and forms its crystal spiral. And then the crystal spirals meet, but they're still at this axis, which is the 0 point axis, and that's the axis that was birthed on. And then there's something called a flame shift cycle that occurs. And this is where we get those images when we're using the flame images and those kind of things. And they form the inner and the inner and the core flames within the unicycle structure. Now, if we come up here, this is the new stuff, and this is where the text started. They said day 8 through day 9. It's called the Aten activation and Akashic record imprinting. Okay? And this is the day 8 to 9 flame shift cycle. The manifest Atori and Adori matter something or other. I can't read. Rasha bodies. Matter, dark matter. What is it? Yeah, matter and light and Rasha bodies, right? Enter the Hall of Records 8-cell cluster and imprint the encryption of the entire thing in the Akashic and Akushik records of the first cell. So there's a whole process where everything that was created so far pulls in to the 8-cell clusters at the center and imprints it with whatever it has become. So it is literally recording it and putting it in the permanent memory record. All right. And during this process, it said the crystal spiral inner light body currents activate the Atori and Adori, and they meet at the 0 point axis, which is when we get here, right there. Right, and they meet the 0 point axis, merging Atori and Adori elemental adjugate twins spark currents. So they're merging the elemental adjugate twin spark currents of the Atori and the Adori side. Okay.